Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, we talk trauma, intergenerational trauma, and healing with Dr. Lydiana Garcia. Check it out.
Woo!
Greetings, Tom Earl here. Before we jump into today's episode, I just wanted to give you a heads up that we do talk a lot about trauma and intergenerational trauma. Is there anything you want to add to that, Dr. Lydiana?
Yeah, if you're right now driving or in a place in your time in your life that this is not something that you want to listen, maybe do it in a time that you're calmer, you're settled, and also perhaps do it in a time that your basic needs are fulfilled, meaning food and all those kind of things. And to know that you can pause it and not continue listening at any time.
And if some things come up for people, do you have any suggestions?
Yes, I would say use some grounding. Like right now, as I'm talking, I'm playing with the little cable because that helped me to ground myself. But using your five senses to ground yourself can be very easy. Like maybe having a scent that you really enjoy, touching something that is a texture that brings you a sense of comfort. Maybe as you're listening to it, maybe look at a picture or a plant or something that provides a visual kind of comfort and stuff like that. And maybe drink something that provides like a hot or a cold drink, or have a taste that brings you back as a way to help you.
Well, as you can see, this was a good insight because we're going to have some deep conversations, but at the same time, Dr. Lydiana gives you some amazing tools that you can use as well. So without further ado, here we go. Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of grace. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. As you can see, I am not alone. I have an amazing guest. She goes by the name of Dr. Lydiana Garcia. How's it going today, Lydiana?
It's going good. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Welcome.
Do you mind if I introduce you to the good folks out there via reading your bio?
Sounds great.
Dr. Lydiana Garcia is a Latina licensed psychologist in Los Angeles. And she is the founder and owner of the Beyond Resilience Life. She's an expert in teens, young adults, parenting teens, trauma, child abuse, sexual-related traumas. Recently, she has also developed a passion for working with moms that are struggling to manage their own trauma triggers while parenting their children. Dr. Garcia has received numerous training in evidence-based modalities that treat trauma, including EMDR, Trauma Resiliency Model Level 2, Seeking Safety, and TF-CBT. Lydiana is also the host of the podcast, The Beyond Resilience Life, which is a bilingual podcast about trauma, life adversities, bouncing back, and transforming one's life. The mission of the podcast is to bring cutting-edge information integrating psychology. What's this word? Epigenetics?
Yes.
Ooh, we're going to have to ask about that.
Yes.
Quantum physics and biology in order to provide simple and effective skills to help heal, recover, and transform your life after experiencing trauma. You are doing really awesome work out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate what you're doing. I mean, healing work, like really diving in, helping people. So the gratitude is all on you. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
I always like to start with the same question, and that is that your bio is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
And at the same time, it can't ever capture the essence of who you are. So if we were to say, like, if you really knew me, you would know that, what would be your answer to that?
If you really knew me, you would know that I was born and raised in a tropical island, seeing the ocean from my home, surrounded by a lot of family, a lot of cousins, a very brave little girl who would always like to, what's the word now I'm thinking in Spanish, who would always like to challenge my parents, challenge the status quo, challenge things, and who recently have learned more about her own intergenerational trauma and is questioning a lot of things and beliefs that she used to have.
And did she know at that young age that she was going to grow up to be a doctor and a psychologist? Did she know that?
You know what? She knew it at 8th grade. She knew it at 8th grade. She was saying she was going to be a psychologist at 8th grade.
How
Yeah.
does she know that? I wanted to be in the band Korn when I was.
Yeah. I mean, when I was little, I wanted to be a ballerina and an ice skater, professional ice skater, even though I was in an island. There was not even an ice rink. But at 8th grade, they made us do an English class, a book report, and I did it on a book about eating disorders. And I chose it because one of my aunts had that book and I read it, and it was on a first person story of someone battling with anorexia. And I was fascinated by the family, the story. I was like reading it like, that's because she's the middle child. And then at the end, the psychologist and psychotherapist that treated her, it was all about that. And I'm like, oh, I'm good at this. And then I watched a lot of movies that had some like psychological thrillers, and I was able to figure it out. And with my cousins, with my friends, I was the person that they would go to. So that's how it was. Yeah.
And
I'm rare. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
What's the journey been like? Is it super easy? All you had to do is show up and here you are?
Well, it's never like that, right? I was blessed in terms of academics because that piece was never that hard. But throughout the journey, I kind of did too much, and later on, I had to pay for it. So, and that's the piece that right now I'm rediscovering myself and rediscovering, the depths that I have in my body for that kind of like super strong drive that I had. So in some people might say it was easy because at 27, I had my PhD, but what people don't see is everything that I sacrificed for, like my time, traveling, being with friends, and all of that. So,
Was it worth it?
oh yeah, I would say yes. So right now I'm doing a lot of deep work in terms of how to recover all those steps and how to try to enjoy life a little bit more. But yes, I don't regret it. I'm enjoying my field. I enjoy what I do. And I enjoy mostly when I see the healing that my knowledge and experience can provide.
So let's jump right into the light subject of trauma.
Yes, light subject. Yeah.
What is trauma?
How I define it, it's more of an experience that created some kind of intense reactions in terms of your nervous system, in terms of your emotions, or even your thought patterns that could have changed as a result of that. And it was not kind of processed or consolidated. So it kind of gets stuck somewhere in your body, and it could be something usual big trauma like a super huge car accident, sexual abuse, and all those kind of what people are usually known or know about what is trauma. But it could also be anything like parents saying no all the time or not letting you do this kind of things, or having issues with your friends, or maybe starting to get made fun of, but not to the point of like bullying. So, and is any kind of experience like that, transitions in life can be somewhat traumatic that can kind of prompt all those reactions.
My mom's a social worker for maybe 35 years by this
Oh,
point.
wow.
Been in the game for a long time. So she always says everything comes back to trauma. Do you
Yeah.
agree with that?
I agree, because a lot of the time we are functioning based on the beliefs and the behaviors that we developed during those times. And recently, as I was reflecting on one of the posts that I did in my Instagram, it was about that. It was like how your survival coping skills are no longer serving you, because we're used to routines and we develop things and we develop beliefs, we develop behaviors that a lot of times served us in a specific moment in our lives. But if you look at the current moment, they might not be serving you. They might be limiting you in your goals, in your relationships, in your daily routines or new routines that you want to do. So that's why I believe that everything comes back to trauma.
So mom is always right, huh?
Yes, they are always right. Yeah. Yes.
So it's complex. How do I know if something I'm doing was a choice, was because of trauma, was because, how do I know that? How do I like stir that up and figure it out?
Yeah, I would say a lot of inner work in terms of a lot of inner reflection. It's a journey. It's not like a black and white, like you get it or you don't. And many of the things that I thought were by choice, and that's what I'm doing a lot of inner work. Some of these patterns being repeated in my family generations and all those kind of things. So I do a lot of inner questions like, what is this? Is this serving me? Where is this coming from? And all those kind of things.
So can you talk, what does inner work look like? Is it what you
Yeah.
just said? Go ahead.
Yeah, so how I interpret or my definition of inner work is basically like pausing and going inwards in terms of asking myself questions. And usually I now develop a morning routine in which I kind of journal a little bit of what I'm grateful for. And I integrate there what the her name is Dr. Nicole Libera calls the future self journaling, which is more about how I do it is more like thinking of myself of what I know I'm capable, my higher self, but speaking it and writing it from the first tense, like, like in the present, like I'm programming myself for that. And also what am I committed for that day? And then like, if I am struggling, let's say with shame, with doubting myself, then I sit there and kind of meditate in terms of just silence, or sometimes I put music and just ask, where is this coming from? Where else have I experienced this? And a lot of times it happens through relationships, like new business partners or new people that you meet, and you get triggered. And how I get triggered, or how I like to help people understand, is like when you have an reaction and you're like, wait, why am I being so defensive? Why am I saying no? Why am I doing this? Or why am I like feeling this sense of jealousy or anger toward this person? And that can be a sign for a trigger. So I explore those kind of things on a daily basis for the most part. And that's my inner work. And I journal about it, I write about it, and then I write from like it can get very complex in terms of like my inner parent, so kind of like reparent myself, like a part of me that will be the ideal caregiver that I did not necessarily have, talking to myself from that perspective, like validating myself, like I can see that you're angry, I can see that that got you upset, and you're okay. That's, that was their situation, that's not yours, something like that, that I either just think it, speak it out loud, or write it.
So I'm hearing one step is to become aware of maybe when you react in a way that almost felt out of your control, or when you think back on it, you're like, I don't like the way I reacted.
Yes, a lot of times I find it the difference between reaction and response, and many of us are mostly just reacting. And how you can start figuring it out is like when you do something and you were like, whoa, like it caught you off guard. Like you can, it's like something took over you. When that happens, if it's not that there's a real threat, let's say that there's an earthquake or something, then I would question, where is this coming from? And what was it that I couldn't respond in here? And when respond would be more of like being able to pause, assess the situation, and that could happen in seconds. It's not like, okay, step one, pause. It's not like that necessarily, like very mechanical. But in general, like you pause, you assess the situation, and then you can decide whether you want to partake in the argument or in what's going on.
So if I identify, let's say when this thing happens, like I don't know, let me think of an example. Like your partner leaves the wet towel on the floor and you're like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to trace back where that trauma came from that has me reacting like that? Or can I just be like, I don't want to react like this anymore. I'm going to start to become mindful every time it happens. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you need to trace?
Yeah, I would say, is it bothering you? Like, it's something that is a reaction that then you're like super upset with your partner, and then like you get like resentful, or like the whole day then goes bad. Like you're driving bad. If it's something that is bothering you, then definitely look for it. But I'm also not the type of person that I would recommend exploring everything, because otherwise that could be too much, and people can go down that rabbit hole So I usually start with just the ones that are things that are not serving me or that are getting in the way of who I believe I am capable. And that's why I'm also kind of doing a lot of work. And that one is more spiritual in terms of who I believe I can be and the values that I wanna project and be.
At what point should I take this journey from just being only by myself, journaling, reflecting, meditating, going for walks, and bring in a mental health professional?
I mean, of course, I'm going to recommend going to a mental health professional can be really helpful, and seeking and finding the right one. I know that can be a super hard journey. I've been there too. But in general, if it's something that it's kind of impairing your daily functioning, that's when I would say definitely seek professional help. And what I mean with that is you are like, if you cannot sleep here and there, but it's been like a week and you haven't been able to sleep because that issue keeps popping in your head, or you keep waking up several times at night. You are having difficulties either eating more or eating less. You're having difficulties in your relationship. It's, going to work can become a hassle, or you're making a lot of mistakes and all those kind of things like in your daily functioning, then definitely seek professional help.
So I've been over the past 2019, I think you're like my fourth or fifth mental health professional to join us. So really trying to drive this one home to the listeners out there. Let's say that someone's on that precipice. They're like, well, Tom, like you keep knocking me over the head with this, but something's holding me back about going to see a therapist or a mental health professional. What would be your advice or sales job, if you will, of helping us to get them over that threshold and into the therapist's office or phone?
Yeah, it's interesting because that's the second time I get the same question today. Well, I would say, first of all, just to validate that most people feel the same way. I have not yet seen someone come to my first session and be like, I'm so happy I'm here. I was so looking forward to this. Mostly everybody feels, and even myself when I have sought out help, it's like that sense of like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm here. So just to normalize that, don't wait until you feel like I'm ready for this, because you might never feel that way, because it's just not something that we look forward to, like a treat. The other thing would definitely say, as you're doing your research in terms of looking for the different therapists that are there, to feel comfortable to ask questions. Maybe send them via email, send them all the questions that you have. And you can even Google like questions to ask therapists. There's so much information out there. And to know that if you start seeing one first session does not mean that you got married to that therapist and that's it. You have options to keep looking for the one that feels like a good fit. And a good fit is one of the most important, regardless of all these titles, all these degrees, and all the trainings. A good fit meaning that you feel comfortable with that person and you feel like that person has the best interest for you, then that's the person that will be a keeper.
What would you say is the reward of going down that journey?
Oh, I've seen so many rewards. I would definitely say even the aspect of having someone to be there for you, to have your back. And some people might be like, well, it's only for that hour or 45 minutes or whatever. But to someone that to be there to validate you, it's kind of like a re-experience, like a new type of connection that most of us don't get out in the real world. Like if we go out and we start talking about something that we're going through, people might be very dismissive, like, just be happy and all that. But to have someone to be there and be able to have your back, that in itself can be so reassuring and can give you the boost that you need to actually make whatever you want, decisions you want to make. The other piece is about the awareness that you can gather, the changes that you can start implementing. How I like to work, because I know there's a lot of different therapists and psychologists, how I like to work is more of a collaborative. So I don't see myself as, even though I have all this information that I'm like the super expert, I want to help the person go into this path. And I love it when we're both like walking the path and like I'm just facilitating the conversation or the exploration in their bodies. And then they go like, I just had an aha. And I'm like, here, like, I just had an aha too. Like, all this kind of thing. Because a lot of times it's a parallel process.
So if you were an educator, I'd call that student-centered learning. What do you call it in therapy?
There's like scholar therapy, there's like researcher therapy, there's all these kind of models. I would say there's so many different ways of seeing it. How I like to simplify it is like, you want me to go there, but there's like the big three schools of thought in psychology, the old ones, and one of them is the humanistic. And I am like more into that. Like I like to perceive the person from aspect of potential. Like I believe that they're inherently good, that they can do it, that they just need to unpack and unload everything that's being put on them. And when they look inside and when they accept who they really are and start functioning from that, a lot of times many things fall off, but many other things start like moving into the path that they want to.
What is intergenerational trauma?
A big word, right? There's so many different ways. How I like to define it is it's basically trauma that's been passed on via generations. So usually, there's so many different ways, but there's people that say up to 7 generations before us, and then you pass stuff up to 7 generations forward. And there's like basic 3 ways of the passage of this trauma. One of them is in the womb. So as you're in the womb of your mom, we all come from a mom's womb. Basically, you were an egg inside your mom, inside your grandma's womb. So if you pause there and, you were an egg inside your mom when she was a fetus inside your maternal grandmother's. And now they're also tracing it back in terms of our male side, which gets too complex that it's so hard for me to even explain it. So that whatever experience while your grandma was pregnant, after your egg was developed, which I think is about the 4th month, and then whatever your mom experienced with you while she was pregnant, that gets passed on. Right now, there's a lot of research that even cortisol gets passed through the placenta and other kind of things, the food, the nutrition, all of that. So that's one. The second one is more epigenetics in terms of our gene expressions and what can kind of like our gene expressions, like our DNA is passed on as well. And the third one is more about in terms of the experiences your parents have. Because let's say your parents came from a lot of trauma. The way that they're going to raise you is going to be probably from that trauma kind of lens. And a lot of times what I see in those cases is usually overprotection, maybe a lot of secrets, not wanting to talk about things, maybe very scared about things, like be careful with the police, don't go here, don't go there. And the child might not understand what's going on, but a lot of it is being passed on generation and generation. And there's a lot of this whole intergenerational trauma topics and all that, a lot of it stemmed from the Jewish community exploring the Holocaust impact in their, grandkids and all that.
Well, it's interesting you go there because my background is I'm a Black Studies major. And for a lot of my professional career, I've been working with survivors of the Holocaust and other forms of genocide. And so that's where I first started to hear about it was what is the intergenerational trauma impact of the transatlantic slave trade and of the Holocaust. And even now with poverty and institutionalized discrimination, can you speak to any of your research or findings or reflections on that?
And that's where I mostly lately have been going to, because I think it was 5th generation. I have slavery in my background from my paternal side. And it has really opened. And I'm also, Puerto Rico it's kind of like a modern colony. We want to, we try to put all these beautiful names, but it's a modern colony. So I've also experienced the aspect of colonization. And that's what I meant, this whole like super drive that a lot of people admire of myself. Now I'm seeing it that it was a result of probably that slavery of survival. Like you keep on going, you keep on going, you keep on going, because that way, then you won't get killed or get a higher degree because that, do this because that way, then you'll be professional enough to not be considered this way. So now I'm pausing in terms of whenever I get that drive of like, I need to do this, I need to do that, and be like, okay, pause. Where is this coming from? Like, is this a sense of like, I feel like I'm going to die? to the core and I need to do this as a survive, or is this something that I really want to do? And it's been hard, believe me, because I've always identified with my drive and my persistence. But I would say in general, it can explain so many things. It can explain fear, it can explain anger, it can explain so many things, and it's very fascinating.
So if and feel free to tell me, like, I don't know the details, Tom, but do you mind sharing any of the research that was coming out around people who are documenting family survivors of the Holocaust, or any studies that you've studied on this?
Yeah. The piece that I've read the most is more related in terms of the fears that the parents are raising their children, and the children being like feeling this sense of anxiety and being extra nervous or worried a lot, and all those kind of aspects. I've read a little bit about the Holocaust, but it's still kind of newer information for me as well. And that's why when I talk more in terms of the slavery part, because that's the one that it's more about what I've experienced. But I would definitely say that I can send you all the different names. I don't have right now the books that I've read recently or I've started to read, and they talk a lot more.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So just to share a little bit of what I know to set up my question.
Yeah.
So I got to work at a museum where every week I got to work with a survivor of the Holocaust. And one of those survivors was a psychologist. And his son did a research project that examined, I believe it was 3 generations after the Holocaust. And then, so they took families in Los Angeles that were survivors of the Holocaust, 3 generations. And then all the variables were the same, except for another set of 3 generations where they were Jewish, but were not survivors of a Holocaust. Mm-hmm. And then they studied all of these variables that showed a lot of, like you were saying, like the different ways traumas have been passed down. Mm-hmm. So my question becomes, and even hearing, what you're sharing from your own lived experience and your own family's experience, how do we like grapple with this? Am I my own person? Am I the result of trauma experienced in my own life? Am I the result of, 500 years of white supremacy? Like, how do you grapple with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is such a complex topic. And what I would say that I think is really important is that I know some people can go here and it depends on who says it, but we're all survivors of something. To be here, we survived. And in one of the books, and I'll send you because right now I can remember the title, they started talking about how this whole situation with the white supremacists in US and in some other areas of the world is a lot of them were also survivals of something. And and I'm talking now more US, when they moved here, they were running away from something. But over here, then they became the oppressor. And by being the oppressor, they have kind of avoided being the victim. So fearing getting that power taken out is creating something. But that book was like really emphasizing it's not until general, and whites will kind of explore that a lot of this will start shifting into a better society. Because yes, a lot of them came here moving away. And even, as I hope whoever listens to this just know that I'm talking from a very sensitive, and I know it's such a sensitive topic, but when you study history, most societies have taken over other societies, and that's how it was. So in a way, we've all been survivors. However, what we have in the situation right now is, I feel like it's not being validated of the situation. It's being so dismissed. Like, you all have the same opportunities, which is not true. And continuing to be dismissed, instead of actually just tackling the situation and sitting down.
That's so deep. And it reminds me what you just brought up. So often the lens is cast on the survivor or the victim, rather than talking about how did the oppressor or the perpetrator, how did their identity be developed to the point where they're living as a perpetrator.
Yes.
We
yes.
we had a previous guest, her name was Fanshin, and we were talking about like how violently the process is of forming a white identity.
Yes.
Like it's a violent process to be a white man, like to have the pathologies that we do, to look at the world the way that we do. What do you think are ways that we can begin to have an open and honest conversation to heal this kind of trauma around the pathology that comes with being a colonizer or an oppressor?
Mm-hmm. You know, we're going so deep here because as I'm exploring my whole intergenerational, there's a lot of movement about decolonize and all of that, which I think is really important. And there was one ex-supervisor that she kind of mentioned that for things to shift, we usually have to go to the complete opposite before we go somewhere in between. And I find that it's important that the people that are bringing this whole movement of decolonization to bring it, because it's bringing so much awareness. But at the end, you know, like someone like me that is three racial or whatever, over here is this whole thing. In Puerto Rico, we're all Puerto Ricans, but this whole thing about my ethnicity. But I did the genetic test. So, and I know some people can say it's not accurate, but I do have colonizers in my blood. And if I go completely on the other side, then I'm also kind of ignoring that part of me. So I find that I think it's important to start having the conversation of listening, because a lot of listening needs to be done, a lot of validating each points of view. We human beings, we like to fight about who has it the worst at time. Like my trauma is worse, my trauma is worse. And it's not about that. It's like, let's empathize with the pain and let's listen and validate each other. And I think that's where it's missing. And doing it from openness, and know that if you're getting triggered, because it could be such a triggering subject, then there might be something there for you. There might be something that may be how you were raised, or maybe it's fear, because a lot of times triggers are fear and of a threat, and it could be of a real threat or our perceived threat. And that perceived threat could be passed generation by generation, because also like your parents raised you, and those first, I think you mentioned something like the first, you know, childhood, like, and early years are so important because we're also like more in a hypnotic kind of state. So a lot of what we see, what we hear becomes part of our own unconscious. And a lot of times our ancestors, especially if it's more oppressors, will say these things. So whenever you feel that and you're triggered by it, you might be sensing that.
You brought up an awesome word, which was empathy.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard Brene Brown say empathy is the antidote to shame.
Yeah.
What has been your findings, or what does empathy mean to you in this work that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's not to feel it all. Some people get confused with empathy, meaning like you have to feel it in you and then you have to own it and all that. But it's more of just listening, I would say, to each other pains, and then kind of validating that they have a right to feel that way. Because we usually want to change them, because we also don't like to feel those things. And a lot of it comes from our projections. Like whenever I have this feeling that I don't like, I want it to be changed ASAP. And that's also what the society promotes, right? Negative thoughts, kind of like out, you know? So whenever you're hearing someone else, it's okay to just be there for them and just listen and validate their experience without the need to change anything.
How do you think, what's some advice you have on how people can become better and deeper listeners?
I'm like, study psychology? No, just kidding. What I would say would be well, a lot of times it's just, you know, asking questions. Maybe start slow, because sometimes we want to like, now I'm going to listen, and you might just throw yourself in it, and that might be too much. Just start asking questions. Like maybe you're in the grocery store line, you know, ask, hey, how are you doing? And when some people start opening up like, oh, my day is going really bad, just try to keep non-verbally there, meaning eye contact, keeping your posture kind of calm, taking deep breath if you need to, and be like, oh, wow, yeah, I'm sorry to hear. And that's it. And maybe starting slowly. And then Also explore you listening to yourself, because we usually do to others what we do to ourselves. So kind of like start just asking yourself questions. How am I doing today? How am I really doing today? And start noticing what happens if you start going like, I'm not feeling good. Like, it's something that you want to change it right away, or something that you want to like ignore it and go somewhere else. Just start tracking your body, which in other words is just like scanning it. What am I sensing right now as I'm saying this? And if you sense that you feel like kind of like agitated, that could mean that it's you're not feeling regulated. Or if you start feeling like you're cold and you're numbing or tingling, that might feel like you feel like it's too much. And that's a very good sign of the body being like, this is too much. We don't want to go there right now. So, but it's a daily journey process. And that's how I would say to start this whole listening without having to offer any suggestion, unsolicited suggestion, because that is hard for many people.
So just listening can be enough. You don't have to then go into.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand upon that at all? That seems like a good one.
Yeah, listening for many people is just enough. Like, I mean, I also believe that people have their answers inside, and a lot of times they're just like the extra noise of what's going on. But by you listening to them and validating, that gives them the space to pause and be like, oh, somebody else is noticing this and it's okay. And that gives the person the permission to feel it. And a lot of times they feel it and then it goes away and then it shifts, because an emotion does not stay the same forever, even though it might feel like that. And sometimes when we keep avoiding, like, we cannot go there, we cannot feel that, it gets worse because we kind of like put it somewhere else and then it comes like an explosion. So that's why I feel like listening, in a way, it gives the other person the permission to feel it and explore it. And also the opportunity to know of connection, that there's somebody else that is there for them.
The power of just being seen and heard.
Yes, it's one of the basic, most important needs that we all have.
I found I do a lot of conflict mediation, and that no matter the conflict, if you can get both sides to a place where they feel seen and heard, that there's just this like exhalation, like, okay, we can go from here.
Yes, yes. And that's what a lot of people just seek when they're looking for therapy. It's just to have someone neutral that can just, you know, be there for them in that sense, because they usually don't get that outside.
So I want to go back to intergenerational trauma again. So for people, I found for a lot of younger people, and by younger, I mean 20 to 50, going through this self-reflection, I think with the internet, us having access to this information, a lot of people are realizing that like my parents have a lot of, or my parent has a lot of this behavior that I know comes from trauma, but they're not doing anything about it. And it feels very hurtful, oppressive, scornful, shameful to me. Yeah. And so I know it's a lot of young people, once again, 20 to 50, grappling with, do I cut my parents out? Like, how do I create healthy boundaries? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, another kind of complex subject. I know there's a lot of promotion out there to kind of cut people out and when they're creating boundaries. I have a little different sense of it, I guess, coming from an, colonized minority and all that, in terms of how that I feel like it's part of the survival mechanism, because animals survive better when you're in a pack. So if the whole family sticks together, then we have a higher chance of surviving. So I feel like sometimes we hear go like, oh, they're like all in my business. But I feel like in a way that could be a trauma sign, that they feel and they believe that by doing that, then they can all survive. So I love this other perspective that another Latinx therapist kind of mentioned, which is more about recognizing and translating in your mind what they're saying. Like, why are you not doing that? Maybe knowing like, oh, they really love me and they want the best for me and they worry that I'm not going to have that. Not taking it just at verbatim, but kind of like trying to figure out what is the need behind it. And that does not mean that to stay there, like, cut the time that you, like if you want to meet them, and all that, cut the time, maybe set some of the rules or the boundaries, like we're going to meet in this restaurant, so that way we're not at home, so it might be difficult or more difficult to leave the house. But all that, and to prepare a lot, I give a lot of my clients tools to kind of like, if you want to go there, what can you do to prepare yourself? Like using your five senses to keep yourself regulated, and what could be your sign of what you need to do if you have to leave, and how that's going to be okay. And it's kind of like you're reparenting the family of a different way of being. Yeah.
What's your advice for people who are trying to decide if they even have the energy to do that?
Then I wouldn't do it. If you're like in a stage that you're like, I don't know if I have the energy, then don't do it. Then kind of recoup, get the energy in case you want to go back. That the people will get mad, they will. Changing a behavior for ourselves is hard. Like when we start doing like a change of behavior, we are upset with ourselves. The same happens with the family. So just know that that's going to be part of the package. That they might be texting or calling like, well, you don't want to come, la la la. And you don't have to answer, is that's completely true. And do whatever you need to. Like, don't feel like obligated. It's not like, again, like a black and white kind of, thing. It's more like however it works for you. But if you're like, I don't know if I have the energy, then I would say it sounds like you don't have it.
If I could just add my 2 cents too, I think for both directions, parents who are feeling disconnected from their kids or kids who are wanting more from their parents, that I know we could all die at any time, but for the most part, like I think if you just expand the timeline, like give it 5 years, like a lot of healing on both sides happens in 5 years.
Yeah. I know. I'm a mom now, so I'm like, it'll be interesting because right now he's all over me all the time. But when he starts not being all over me, that will be something. But I think it's also like the awakening, and a lot of times it takes one person in a family to awake and change for the whole family down the road, not right away. To start, wait, why is that person doing that? Maybe that's not that bad. But that, it takes one courageous person in a family to change a pattern.
So you had mentioned that you're a new mom, did you say?
Yeah, well, 4-year-old. He's 4. Yeah.
Oh, 4. Oh
Yeah.
man, that's a fun age.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and a boy. So, and he's very that kind of I don't want to call it typical, but he's very like that, all over me and mommy, like very, very, very sweet, and like he's always praising me. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in your bio, you had shared a discovery of a new passion working with the trauma or postpartum depression that moms are going through, or new parents. Do you mind talking a little bit about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I think it's super important. And it was based on my own experience. When I went through that stage is when I start feeling like numb and like disconnected from my child. And I knew something was out of it. And that's when I started exploring, because part of, before even a psychologist, my brain is like, I need to figure out what's going on. Like I'm like very into figuring out. And then I started putting different pieces of the puzzle together, and I started discovering some intergenerational trauma in terms of my mom experience when she had me, my grandma experience when she had me, my mom as an infant she almost died as an infant, and other things like that. And I'm like, this is making sense. And that's when I sought help, and I sought mostly like somatic based therapy to kind of help me, because a lot of it was not language. And I like to go into logic. I remember that therapist being with me like, okay, let's not talk, let's go into the body. And I was like, let's talk, because I'm very much, I want to explain things. But when you go into the body, my body was just feeling like a lot of fear of people coming inward or closer to me, and I was like pushing things away. So that was kind of my experience. And then I was able to manage it. I continued therapy and all that. But a lot of parents go through a lot. And then having a child, I feel like it's having like a mirror of all the things that need some healing. Besides everything, the joy that can come from it, you can also have like a mirror of all the things that need healing. And it's a great opportunity for parents to kind of delve and explore that from a judgmental or like non-defensive as much as possible, because a child will trigger you. Will say things that probably was never allowed in when you were a child, and now you want to change the way that you're a parent, because in the past a lot of what's considered right now child abuse was normalized. But if you want to change those behaviors, then you're like, then what do I do? So that's why I'm like working with a lot of parents and understanding, and for moms particular, becoming, it's like somebody mentioned that it's like the soul leaves the body and comes back like around 2 years. And that's how I felt. It's like this whole new thing, especially for, and I can speak more in terms of women, like all this, like I can be a good mom, I can be a great employee, I can have my business, and all this kind of expectations that we put that we can have it all. And then we put so much pressure. So I like to help moms get adjusted to that.
What would be a message, or what would you like to share with any moms who are listening right now, and something you're saying stirring some things up right now?
Yeah. I would say that if any of this is stirring something, just know that you're not alone, first of all. It's something that is shared with mostly everyone. It's just a lot of people are not open about that. But if you really ask someone that is also a caregiver, a mom or dad, they might be going through something similar. So just know that you're not alone. You're not going crazy because you feel sometimes that you don't want to be a mom that day or a caregiver that day. And the other thing is that to seek support, either by professional support, either by indirect, like kind of your support network, other moms, stuff like that, to help you start to come back into who are you becoming as a mom. And what do you want to do? What do you want to how do you want to parent your children differently? And it's possible.
And so then let's bring it out to the larger audience. We talked about, I feel like, some really important things. And for some people, they might be feeling a little raw right now. Like this is a little heavy, Tom. I didn't see this coming.
Yes.
So is hope cliche? Is optimism being Pollyanna? What are your thoughts on hope and being optimistic amidst all of the stuff that we just brought up?
Yeah. I'm an optimistic by heart. I think that's part of my soul mission in this world. And I would definitely say that I have seen so many people kind of get back a lot of their lives back after doing the work, and they've gone through horrendous situations, and then they can, get the job that they want, or start the business that they want, or be able to be assertive and express themselves how they want, feel better with themselves. So it is possible. I've seen it. And the other thing is that I feel like right now is a very interesting time that a lot of these things are coming up. So I think it's a beautiful time to be here on Earth, because a lot of people are awakening to this newer kind of these conversations. I mean, I don't think like 15 years ago would have been something that people would have had. And the fact that you're listening, if you're still listening to this up until, that also shows that you do have that seed of hope, and there's something that you feel like you could do or that you can help. So that's the piece that I would say.
Can you talk about what is secondhand trauma?
Yes. So secondhand trauma, it's more of just observing it or witnessing it. And that can also elicit emotions. Like I remember, I think it was 2014, 15. There was a year that there was like, I think it was the year of Maria. Right now today is 2-year anniversary of the hurricane that it was horrendous in Puerto Rico. And I think that year, 2017, there was like other hurricanes and then the fires in California. And I remember I had to stop watching the news because I was not, like, it was impacting my sleep. It was impacting my eating. So whenever you're observing something and it's kind of bringing all those emotions, then you can still have some trauma symptoms as a result of that. You don't have to leave it to kind of, experience it.
So I feel like especially we're both in this kind of work in different aspects. So it's something that many years ago, I had to come up with a routine, self-care around because I was just destroying me. But I think people underestimate how much, just from being an activist in the world we live in now on social media, seeing police videos of police shooting people, or like you said, or we look at what's happening at the border with these concentration camps, that even listening to us now, this can be some secondhand trauma for people. What is, either for yourself or a recommendation for other people, a ritual, self-care? How can people be taking care of themselves to, take that seriously?
Yeah, I would start with knowing what you can and cannot do at the moment, because sometimes we want to change it right there and then. And this issues started and they did not develop from a day to another. And a lot of times we feel like in that moment, that sense of hopelessness and helplessness, that we want to change it. So I would start with just acknowledging that and knowing what can you do then today, even if it's a smaller scale. So that way you feel like you're giving back. For example, a random act of kindness. Maybe that day signing up for volunteering to go and serve food for the homeless, or to volunteer to go and do a talk on the concentration camps that are happening in the borders, something so that way you feel like you're doing an action item, because sometimes we delve into the whole issue and then we feel like, what can we do? But even if it's a little step, even if you are not doing that with your family, just, listening to a family member, calling someone and really listening, that way you're like giving it forward. I think that's important. In terms of self-care, knowing when to stop would be a first. Knowing when to disconnect from the news, disconnect from what's going on, because knowing that if you're given from an overflowing cup, then you're not necessarily given. You're actually can be even hurting other people. So how to get back into you. And for me, I'm a psychologist, so I see a lot of people, and that's, I am improving my boundaries of not taking any calls during the weekends. People can leave me a voice message and I can listen to it on Monday. So that way, boundaries to help me. And I like to, when I do my notes, I like to do them at the office, because when I bring it home, then I bring it home. Then I do other things, like I use Palo Santo and all this kind of other stuff to help me. Sometimes I like to also distract myself and not go so much into reflection. So distract by watching a TV show that I like, or just going out with my friends, or, going out to eat. Exercising can be really helpful. Being in nature can be so healing. So whatever kind of rings for you and feel like it will be helpful for you.
So for our super fans out there who have become Lydiana super fans and are like, I need more, tell us about your podcast.
Yes. So the Beyond Resilience Live, and you can find me right now in the 4 big ones: Stitcher, iTunes, Podcast, Spotify, and Google Play. And I also have my website. So if you just don't want to listen via any of those, you can also listen it via my website, which is www.thebeyondresilience.live.com. And right now, I basically just finished first season, and it's a bilingual podcast. So each episode is in English and in Spanish. And the first season was more about the overview of trauma and resiliency and healing. So I went to the body, spiritual was the last episode, how it impacts relationship, nutrition and healing, chiropractor or body work and healing, stuff like that. And then the people that I'm interviewing, they're bilingual and they're mostly Latinx. I had one that she wasn't, but then I translated that one. And the other piece I guess I would like to say about my podcast is the message of healing and hope, and giving specific, because I'm in this field, we can go into all these theories, and I like to get specific recommendations that people can implement right away in their healing journey. So that's about the podcast. And then I've also started a community based out of the podcast. And right now is the membership that I have. And on a monthly basis, there's different topics. For the month of September, it was healing the inner child. And I included some video explaining the topic of the month. I included a monthly Q&A that people can jump in a Zoom call and ask questions. I also send it like handouts and sheets to help them do their own inner work and extended podcast content. So that's like the basic part of the membership, to be affordable and to a larger community, because I started in community mental health, so I know the importance of that. And besides of that, then I'm now starting a program of offering group coaching which is within the membership, so people can have the basic of the membership that I just described, and then there's the group coaching, and those are limited spots. And what I mean is like more of a group. It's not group therapy, but it's more like work in a group, because a lot of times people just go into individual and they forget that the communities can be so healing. So that's why I want to offer that. And I'm also going to have very, very limited individual coaching spaces. And this is besides my therapy practice.
So show notes today, folks, tommerl.com/Lydiana, tommerl.com/LYDIANA, tommerl.com/Lydiana. You'll find links to, you're on Instagram, right?
Yes.
You'll find links to Lydiana's Instagram, to the Beyond Resilience Life podcast, and to Lydiana's website, where you can find all the information on being a part of her coaching, group coaching, or community membership program. This has been so awesome and amazing. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me and for the deep conversation.
Of course.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions for you. This is our closing ritual. First question.
Yeah.
You might have heard me say that this is my year of grace.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way to center myself within an intention throughout the year and to explore it with my guests. And so my question for you is, what is your definition of grace?
I'm going to say whatever comes first. So my definition of grace is accepting me in the moment and the situation with ease, without feeling like I need to put any judgment in it.
I love that. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
This whole conversation has been amazing. I appreciate you allowing it to go where the Spirit moved us, and you brought a lot of value and insights for our community. So one of my favorite conversations this year. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So our last question, our last closing ritual is for you to share an invitation with the audience. What would you like to invite them to consider, to be, to do, to become? What is your invitation?
My invitation would be to give it a chance to journaling, to journal and ask yourself questions about how do you feel about things, where you come from, and explore your fears and where they're based. Because the more I feel like people do that inner work and go inwards and explore themselves, I feel like the more you're going to be able to provide and be of service to others. And that is how I feel like our world is going to keep changing, because I feel it's already doing so.
Amen. Mm-hmm. Thank you once again, Lydiana.
Welcome.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And to all of those listening, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tommerl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.